Welcome to Noon Wednesday. I'm Marissa Wojcik, multimedia journalist with Here and Now on PBS Wisconsin. Today is March 3. Governor Tony Evers has declared 2021 the year of broadband access. Despite 2020 being spent by most people moving their lives online due to the COVID-19 pandemic, there are still pockets of Wisconsin that have little to no internet access. Joining us today to talk about how this has impacted Wisconsin schools and communities is Assistant State Superintendent from the Division of Libraries and Technology, Kurt Kiefer. And just a note, Kurt Kiefer serves on the Educational Communications Board, which holds one of PBS Wisconsin's broadcast licenses. And Kurt, thank you so much for joining us. A Public Service Commission map not only shows where connecting to the internet just isn't possible, but also where it's very choked up and slow. Do we know the scope of how this has impacted students' learning this past year?
Yeah, we really have, Marissa. And again, thanks for having me on. The issue around students is that basically our prior to the pandemic status, we were requesting information from school districts about the extent to which they're serving kids. And we learned that at that point, prior to the pandemic, there were probably 15% of kids not connected. And in that area, right, we called that the homework gap. Well, it's now called the learning gap because there's a whole bunch of kids that just aren't able to access learning without that connection. And really due to a whole bunch of heroic efforts on the part of those school district folks and the internet providers themselves, they really have stepped up. And today, we're now doing a much more granular collection of that information from school districts. And what we've discovered is that we've probably been able to pare that number down to about 5% or a little less than 5% of kids. But in Wisconsin, I mean, that's 25,000 kids, right? I mean, that's still a lot of kids. And what we've also learned is that there are generally, two different reasons for not connecting. One is they just don't have a provider, or the other is they can't afford it, even if there were a provider. So the problem persists, and we're quite certain it's going to persist even after this pandemic. And so we've done a lot to try to mitigate that issue. But that's where it is today.
Many people think that this is just a rural issue, but that's not exactly true, especially when we think of the cost of internet, and you just mentioned affordability. How is this impacting people, not even just in rural areas?
Yeah, when you look at that data that we've got, it clearly is a broad brush. I mean, it affects kids not only in cities, but in suburban areas as well as rural areas. And clearly, the reasons for why they're not connected vary from geography to geography. In a rural area, it definitely is an issue of there are no providers, there's no access. But in more densely populated areas, it is truly then more of a situation of I cannot afford it. I have to make a choice between this or that in order to pay for it. But I do want to, I want to connect those two things because I think it's really important to think of them that way. Ultimately, it all is affordability, right? I mean, if you can't afford to pay for something because you've got an opportunity to pay for it, but you have these choices in your own home budget and what have you that you have to make, that's one way of looking at it. But in a rural area, affordability is the reason we don't have the infrastructure out there too. It's just, it costs more to build that infrastructure. So the monthly cost might be prohibitive if they were to do it. And so it really is a similar need, and it's an affordability. It just manifests in a little different way from one place to another.
Would something like that exacerbate student achievement gaps, which are already high in certain areas in Wisconsin, particularly in racial disparities?
Yeah, the data aren't there yet to be able to definitively say what the impact of that is, but clearly you can imagine that if you don't have a connection, right, and you're not able to engage even this way with your teacher, there's going to be an issue, right? So we've got a ways to go to be able to determine what that impact is. But the thing that we certainly can do right now is gather that data that tells us who is and who isn't connected, and be able to use that as it relates to addressing their immediate needs, and then also addressing the longer term policy needs that we need to have, that we need to have in place in order to solve the problem.
And when you talk about data, DPI has surveyed students and families about their internet connectivity, but it's only about a third of total enrollment. Is that enough to really know where the problems lie? And how do we know those aren't just the people who have internet?
Yeah, good question. As I mentioned, in the past, we would rely on just aggregate numbers from school districts to say, hey, tell us what percentage of your kids are connected or not connected, and if they're not, why? And that's what we relied on for years. And as I said, with the pandemic, we immediately knew that we had to pivot over to those school districts and get much more granular information for them. And they were doing that themselves, right? I mean, they needed to do that. So what we did was we implemented a method that allowed them to implement those questions right within their the software that they use every single day with parents. And it's a voluntary thing, right? It's a voluntary practice on their part. But what we've tried to do is add value to that by taking that information and marrying it up with other information from providers about who's providing service where, what kinds of programs are being offered. And yeah, we've gotten to a third of the population of students out there reporting that information, but boy, that's a lot more detail than we've ever had before. And that's, it's over 300,000 students that that we have the information for now. And they do it, and it's the voice of the parents, right? It's them telling us, do you have access or not? And if you don't, why? And if you do have access, is it working for you? That's the other thing. Is it even working well for you to be able to support this kind of learning and engagement? So we're, and on a kind of also if you want to benchmark it against other information, the quality of some of the information out there right now, even from the Federal Communications Commission around who has access and who doesn't, is pretty spotty. And so we feel we've contributed mightily to the detail on what is the true accurate story out there in terms of who has access and who doesn't. And as it relates to who's responding to this, we're pretty confident that the information is at least fairly representative as we look at which districts have responded across the state and what have you. So we feel pretty good about the quality of that information that we've gotten, and that is better information than we've had to work with to date.
I spoke with an educator from the Black River Falls School District, and she's a media advisor to students, and she has had to come into the school physically during the pandemic every day because she doesn't have adequate internet at home. She said connecting to a satellite with high latency, for example, just simply doesn't work if you are requiring Zoom calls with multiple students. And issues like this have that forced other school districts and families to come back into the classroom sooner than they normally would have in the midst of a pandemic?
Well, I think the circumstances of not being able to access internet certainly are going to drive behaviors of how you're going to be able to do your work. My heart goes out to those school library media specialists. You mentioned my role. My role is libraries. And so those folks have become heroes in their school districts, literally stepping up to hand out Chromebooks and hotspots and all of those sorts of things to kids. So kudos to my colleagues out in those school districts who serve in those roles. As far as, those behaviors, I can assure you that, they're the 4% roughly of kids that are identified as having satellite access, they're struggling, right, with their connections. There's no question they're struggling with their connections. In Wisconsin, again, that extrapolates out to about 30,000 kids. That's a big number of kids that have inadequate access. And it's not that, it's not to say anything bad about satellite providers. They're a provider of last resort, and they say that, they didn't anticipate being the sole primary provider in a completely virtual learning environment with all video going on. So it just speaks to the need to continue to look at what are the solutions that will work, that allow everyone to have their needs met. So for us, it is about trying to get as much fiber to every house that we could possibly get out there. And those are the things we're trying to emphasize as we work with others and partners on what are the solutions that are needed to make sure we can connect with these folks.
She also said that a grant from the Federal Communications Commission to the service provider CenturyLink in her area should have built that infrastructure out by now, but years later, her connection is still barely above dial-up connection. They told her it's too expensive to reach her home. Are public-private partnerships the way to go if we still have residents being left behind?
That's the nub of the question right there, is what's the right investment and how in order to make sure that everyone has access in an equitable way. If this is how we're going to interact, whether it's learning or healthcare or work, right, itself, we need to make sure everyone has the right kind of connections. Some of the federal investments that have been made have been fine to connect folks who don't need to rely on up and downstream video all the time. But they aren't the solution if that's indeed what we're trying to accomplish from an education perspective, certainly. And so I think as we've, again, tried to say, well, what do we do going forward? It's to make sure that those investments are focused on the technologies that actually deliver what we're trying to accomplish. The other thing I mentioned was data, right? Early on, I've said the Federal Communications Commission has not necessarily had the best quality data about being able to say who's served and who's not served, and have we made the progress that we expect to make in terms of those investments. So with those public-private partnerships come some expectations around, being able to be accountable for those public investments and being able to say, yeah, this is exactly what we've accomplished. And what we've accomplished is the goal that we really want, which is, again, it's future-proofing the technology so that you can continue to live, work, play the way we need to, which is this kind of way.
The pandemic has shown us just how heavily education relies on internet, but also how other areas of our life can rely on internet, from other forms of work, telehealth, paying bills, entertainment. It's our connection to the outside world. If that's the case, should broadband become a public utility?
I think, that's an interesting question, and I think it's one that's up for a lot of debate. I think the way I kind of look at it, I think it's a utility with a small u, right? It's a need. Everyone needs it, and the pandemic has made that very, very clear. There are all kinds of functions that we could have done using public access Wi-Fi and things like that, but that's not going to be sufficient moving forward. And so we've needed to make those investments in a manner that allows us to be able to, make sure that we're meeting those goals.
A district superintendent I spoke with from Maple, Wisconsin, said some of their families get internet, but only get data through their phones. CenturyLink up there is affordable but unstable. The other provider, Norvado, is very fast but very expensive. How exactly do you find equity when people are left with imbalanced choices between quality of service and cost?
Yeah, that's the key, right? And I think it gets back to realizing that this issue isn't necessarily a technology issue. It's more of a funding issue. And I don't even mean that from, is there enough funding? I mean that from the perspective of, if we know that everyone needs to function this way, if everyone needs this kind of technology, then that's the solution we have to put in place. It's this kind of technology. I think a lot of it is, caught up in this notion of, it has to be cost effective. It has to meet a certain return on our investment. And that's true. It is so true that return on investment is a key metric that we have to be thinking about. Things aren't going to happen if it doesn't have a payoff. Well, I think what we're trying to do is pivot the conversation around what's the right return on investment for solving this particular problem. And for me, I've come to this realization that this really needs to be tackled as a public infrastructure problem, not as a nice to have, a want to have kind of technology or service or resource, right? It's something that we have to live. We need to live now with this thing, and so when we thought of it that way, we start thinking about, well, we can't accept really a 5-year payback or return on investment for these kinds of projects that are in rural and sparsely populated parts of the state. It's really more of a 30 or 40-year investment. And when you think about the infrastructure we are trying to consider as the right kind of infrastructure, those are 30, 40, 50, 100-year types of technologies. So pivoting ourselves to thinking about how this is more of that public infrastructure kind of conversation, like we do for fire stations and school buildings and sewage treatment plants and roads, and framing it that way, and then building those funding mechanisms that allow for it to be paid back over 30 or 40 years, that's going to get us to a place where it's equitable. Everybody can have the same kind of connection and not be relegated to a second-class kind of connection if we start thinking about it that way. But that requires public-private partnerships. And so that small U thing is definitely one of the things we have to put in place. We don't need to overregulate. We don't need to not hold people accountable. We do need to do that. We need to find that balance and that partnership, but we've got to frame this as this is something that everybody needs, and it's something that will get paid for just like we pay for things, our roads, our schools, our fire stations, our sewage treatment plants, the same kind of way.
To that end, she also said that her district got a T-Mobile grant where she was able to secure hotspots for students. Florence County School District Administrator I spoke with secured a PSC grant to have more towers put up in their area to get better coverage. Is this patchwork approach sustainable, and is this the way forward, or is there a more unified system that needs to be put in place, and is that what you're speaking to?
Well, I think there have to be some uniformity in terms of what our goals are, right? Especially if we're going to make investments as a state, right? So I think there have to be some aspirational goals that say this is what we're trying to accomplish. With that said, I do believe there are very, very nuanced situations from one community to another that need to be taken into consideration. And if you think about what's going on in Florence or in other communities, they're figuring out how to work with different partners to make that happen in their community. They all need to have the same aspirational goals, right? We need to have this kind of speed and this kind of latency and all of that sort of thing. But how you actually get there is going to probably be a partnership between local government entities and private partners and others, right? The healthcare community, the economic development community. They're all who will be partners in figuring out how to do this. And if you look around, there are quite a few of these pockets across the state, and we need to learn what they're doing and expand that knowledge across to other municipalities and communities across the entire state. Take advantage of what they're doing and figure that out, and then nurture that kind of thing everywhere across the state. There's a bunch of really good innovative stuff that's happening between all of those partners, including some very small providers that are all over the state of Wisconsin too. We can attest to that in terms of just how we've been able to connect kids. Some of those providers have stepped up and they've really helped in their communities. I mean, right? They go to school together. They might serve on the school board together. they go to the same restaurants, they go to, whatever, despite the pandemic and what have you, but they know how to solve problems within their communities. But we also have to hold folks accountable if we're making some public investments.
The same Florence County school administrator said that it has spurred some economic development in their community to have greater broadband access. Has the onus been put on schools to be the canary in the coal mine for this issue?
It's an interesting question. We certainly encourage it, right? We encourage our school districts to step in and lean into this topic. If you look around Wisconsin, right, our school, it really doesn't matter if it's a city, a suburb, or a rural part. Our schools are vital. They really are vital. And I will say this too, our libraries are vital in terms of our communities. And we are encouraging them to step into that conversation. Part of it's with data, like the data they're gathering about who's connected and who's not. Some of it's funding. Some of them have some funding opportunities that now can be leveraged to help solve these problems too, by pooling resources together. So do they have to be the canary in the coal mine? I don't think they have to, but do we encourage them to do it? Yes, because they truly are the lifeblood of a lot of communities, any community, frankly, across the state.
You've mentioned that fiber is a good long-term solution when thinking about building out this infrastructure. But recently, the governor's office announced a pilot program in Vilas County, very far northeast Wisconsin, to tether drones with hotspots. Other people are putting their hopes into Starlink and low latency satellites. Are these part of the patchwork towards the future?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think, as I think that the overall goal has to be aspirational in terms of trying to get fiber everywhere. There will still be niches that might need, even if it's on a temporary path toward fiber, other kinds of connections. So the drone provider is incredibly innovative with what they're trying to do, and that should be encouraged. There's no question it should be encouraged. We fully supported the idea ourselves when we were approached about it, and we're happy that it's continuing forward. Those are situations, and it might be one of those situations where, in the example of needing immediate additional capacity for some sort of an emergency response, that might be an excellent purpose for that. In the interim, it might have value for other kinds of purposes between now and when everybody is connected with fiber. As far as low latency satellite, that's another strategy. It will ultimately be a niche strategy, because I do believe that there will be fiber in more and more places. But is it a card to play? Absolutely, it's a card to play. I think the other thing I would say is with where the state can lean in, and where some of the broadband proposals that have been put in the governor's budget lean into, is helping communities with the process of trying to figure out what's going to work and what's not going to work. The school districts in Wisconsin, there's 425 school districts, right? And the median size school district is 900 students, K-12. That's a graduating class of 65 kids. We're not taught, that means over half of those, over 200 of those districts are smaller than that. Wisconsin's a lot of small towns, and that's great. You can't expect a lot of small towns to figure out a lot of complex situations, and they shouldn't have to if the problem is sort of a repeating problem from one town to another. So leaning in and providing some resources to help them with that, to kind of problem solve, to plan, and then frankly, to apply for some of the monies that are available, that's a really smart play. And so we applaud that. And again, we expect schools and libraries to lean into those conversations as well. It's
2021. Why haven't we gotten there yet? You said Wisconsin has not made these long-term investments necessary for broadband infrastructure. Last month, Governor Evers said his budget will allocate $200 million over the next 2 years for broadband expansion. In the past, in 2011, Republican former Governor Scott Walker turned down $23 million in federal funds. What do we need to get Wisconsin to where it needs to be? Will that $200 million be enough? But also, why haven't we gotten there yet?
Well, I think, honestly, let's be frank, part of it was we didn't necessarily see it as a need. It was more of a want going in, but what a difference a pandemic makes. It's become very apparent how important it is to have these kinds of connections, just to live, work, play. And I think that the light has been turned on, and now folks are really saying, we've got to make this happen. With that, so that's obviously one big reason. But another is and they're connecting those dots to things, as you mentioned earlier. It's like, this is an economic development issue. It's not, if you want to see growth in your community and you want to have a continued in-migration into your community, and frankly, there are a lot of folks we're hearing from, school districts where folks are wanting to relocate back into their towns just because they can, now that we've changed how we do work. But maybe they can't because they don't have adequate broadband. That's a game changer for a lot of places. So another reason, again, I would go back to this notion of we haven't addressed this as an infrastructure problem, really, in the past. We've thought of it as a commoditized thing, and when you have the marketplace, getting things out to folks, the marketplace does what it does, and it does it well. Where there's densely populated areas, you're going to have more competition and more service providers and lower cost and higher quality service than you are in less densely populated areas. Pivoting this now to that it's a need and it's a utility with a small u and it's an infrastructure issue gets us to that conversation of, well, you know what? If we pay for this over 30 years, we can afford it, just like we did 100 years ago with electricity. We did that. And then provide, have the service providers sit on top of that infrastructure and provide high quality service to customers. Those are the main reasons, I think, Marissa, that we haven't had that. I do believe that the proposals that have been put forward by the governor are clearly huge steps in the right direction. If this is the year of broadband, those proposals certainly line up behind that. And I think it's one of those things too, where it's clearly now, more than ever, everyone sees this as a need, and one can only hope that everyone will step forward and go, yeah, let's make it happen this time in Wisconsin. And not just this time, but for the future as well. So, as I really truly believe our future depends on these connections. We were raised, my wife and I were raised in small town Wisconsin too. We love it. We're moving back to a small town Wisconsin as well as we head toward retirement. It's essential. Everybody needs this. And we can do it. We absolutely can do it. We've demonstrated that in our nation's history in the past. We can do it right now in the 21st century.
All right, Kurt Kiefer, State Assistant Superintendent of Public Schools from the Division of Libraries and Technology. Thank you very much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me, Marissa.
For more from Here and Now in PBS Wisconsin, you can visit pbswisconsin.org, and thank you so much for joining us on Noon Wednesday.